So, very good morning, everybody, and a warm welcome to our own podcast, Arohana. This is the Neighbourhood Series, and we have been joined by Mr. Tilak Devasher, who really doesn't need any introduction. Mr. Devasher is the author of widely acclaimed books on Pakistan, and he's retired as Special Secretary for Cabinet Secretariat Government of India in October 2014. He's a former member of the National Security Advisory Board, Emeritus Resource Faculty at the Rashtriya Raksha University, and Distinguished Fellow for United Services Institution of India. So, Mr. Devasher, we are delighted to have you with us on our podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy this conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. We are looking forward to that. And let's really dive quickly into the questions because, so much has happened in the past 1.5 months. We are very eager to understand and, know from you. So the first question is that how has India adapted its military strategy to target terror infrastructure in Pakistan while minimizing the risk of broader conflict resolution?
Interesting. You see, prior to 2016, whenever there was a terror incident, our strategy used to be that we would prepare intelligence into reports, proof, and play this game of dozier, dozier. We would send it to the UN, send it to important countries, showing that complicity of Pakistan in it. But it had no impact. Nobody, either the UN or any country, reacted to those. They just sort of filed the dossiers. And we were told that, you're adopting a high moral ground by not reacting. So that didn't pay any dividend, and there was no deterrent to Pakistan not to repeat this kind of terror incidents. 2016, after the Uri attack, the surgical strikes gave a message to Pakistan. It was a small message because it was just across the LOC that don't do this because there will be consequences. So Pakistan did heed that. In 2019, as you're aware, Pulwama happened. So we launched the attack on Balakot, a terror training camp, which was in mainland Pakistan, not just across the LOC. It seemed to have had an impact. Pakistan kept quiet for 5 years. Then again, Pahalgam happened. So it is obvious that the messaging that India was giving after its surgical strikes in 2016 and its major strike in Balakot in 2019, it had not really impacted Pakistan. Or Pakistan felt it could continue with its policy, what it had done earlier. So this time the message had to be far stronger. The message had to be more severe and had to hurt Pakistan. So this time it was across the IB and into the heart of Pakistan, which is Punjab. So all the terror training camps, headquarters, were hit and kind of demolished. But India made sure that it targeted only the terror camps and headquarters. So you kept the escalation ladder in control. We did not hit any civilians. We did not target any military institutions. It was only after Pakistan targeted civilian institutions, civilian places, and military organizations that India then also escalated. I guess Pakistan's problem was that there are no terror training camps in India. So how were they going to escalate? So they thought, okay, and they didn't think that India would react. We struck them, they struck us back, and they thought that will be the end of it. But then India escalated too. So I think we managed to control the escalation, but clearly signaling that we are going only after the terrorist headquarters and camps.
Right. So, my follow-up question to this is that in what ways has Operation Sindoor exemplified this strategy? And what are its broader strategic and geopolitical repercussions for Pakistan and South Asia as a whole?
So, in this Operation Sindoor, I think we established a new security doctrine that the Prime Minister articulated when he visited Adampur. He mentioned three things, very, very clearly enunciated, that if there's a terror attack on India, It will be treated as war and there will be a fitting response. Second, nuclear blackmail will no longer work. India will strike precisely and decisively. And third, India will not make a distinction between terrorists and their sponsors. And he was quite blunt that if Pakistan wanted peace, it had to dismantle its terror infrastructure. There is no middle ground.
Okay.
As you put it, terror and talks can't go together, terror and trade can't go together, and water and blood can't flow together. These words are historic because now this is the way forward for the national security apparatus of the country. And he ended with a final note that Operation Sindoor is only paused, not ended, and India will evaluate Pakistan's behavior. So I think now South Asia and the rest of the world knows that when that line is crossed, if there is a terror incident, it takes place in India, the response will be swift, it will be brutal, and it will be precise. So there is definitely a new security doctrine in place as a result of Operation Sindoor, and which everybody now acknowledges.
Right. And post that, there has been a lot of conversations happening where India is representing in different countries and going about and talking about these measures. So definitely there has been like an action after that amongst the policymakers.
Yes, I mean, India has put its point of view across
Absolutely.
very articulately and very forcefully in different parts of the world. And there has been, I think, a lot of appreciation for India putting its point across so clearly and unambiguously.
Right. And strongly. I mean, this is
Very strongly, yes.
absolutely, like this is something that we haven't done in the past, and it was, I think, very important and needed
Yes.
at this
So
time.
ever since Pakistan has been bleeding us since years' time, first Punjab, Khalistan, then Kashmir, and then other parts of India, and we always took the moral high ground. And dozier game we used to play. This time we said no doziers. We know Pakistan has done it, and we went after it. So the message is very clear, and as you mentioned, strong and unqualified.
So, amid Pakistan's response to these developments, what does General Asim Munir's unexpected promotion to field marshal, despite military setbacks and political distancing by the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, reveal about their internal power dynamics and strategic recalibration within Pakistan? I know this is a long question, but usually, like the title Field Marshal also comes when the country has emerged victorious in a war. Nothing of that sort has happened. So, what does this mean? What does this signify?
Yeah. So, in military tradition, as you mentioned, the rank of Field Marshal, which is the highest rank in most militaries, is conferred for wartime victories.
Right.
It is not conferred for a career-long distinguished or meritorious service, and it is certainly not conferred for defeat. So the question is, what victory did Asim Munir win? I think he's going to go down in history as being the only general elevated to this rank after a military defeat. And then the other question is, this was largely an air battle. So if Pakistan think that they did so well, then he should have been the air chief, who should have become 5-star, become Marshal of the Air Force. What did Munir do? What did the Pakistan Army do? So it was clearly that, and so the reason for this is something different rather than military victory. You see, it was a military defeat because Pakistan was forced to plead for talks and showed the white flag that they'd had enough. But how do you sell this surrender to the people of Pakistan? You've created this big image of the Pakistan Army, and here they lost within 3 days. So how do you cover up Munir's loss of faith? How to reassert control over domestic perceptions? And added to this, even before Pahalgam, the perception of Pakistan's army was collapsing. Internally, there was dissent. The rank and file were demoralized at what they saw was happening in the country and the deteriorating security situation, especially in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Junior officers were questioning the leadership. Imran Khan continued to be the most popular person, not only on the streets, but even within the army. The economy was in shambles. So when Sindoor happened, it was a force multiplier. It was not just a military defeat, it was a psychological one. Pakistan's delusional narrative of invincibility was shattered. Its nuclear bluff was called. So Pakistan did what they do really well, which is narrative warfare. Through propaganda, through creating a myth, through distraction, through optics. The elevation of Munir to Field Marshal was not about battlefield performance, far from it, but about narrative building and consolidation. By giving the defeated general a baton and calling him a field marshal, they have tried to mask defeat. That's why Munir became field marshal, not for anything substantial that he had done.
Okay. And there is a disparity amongst, the Pakistan government as well, with PM Shehbaz Sharif. This again, like, not an expert, but I really want to understand from you. Like, he really, this is what, was being aired in the news as well, that, PM Sharif had thrown General Naseem Munir, under the bus, by really putting all the blame on him. And then, this was really ironical to raise him to the rank of field marshal post that. So, I mean, would you like to like elaborate a bit more on this aspect?
See, I don't think that Shehbaz Sharif hesitated him, given his weak position. And everybody knows that they really didn't win the election. And they are there because of the army. So that being the case, I don't see Shehbaz Sharif trying to throw Munir under the bus, as it were. But yes, like all politicians, they try to be too clever by half. And whenever he got an opportunity, and he says, I was swimming and General Saab called up and said that India has hit us with the BrahMos and they were about to attack before that. So, small things here and there, but it doesn't detract from the fact that it was after the attack that the same Shehbaz Sharif and the same cabinet that elevated Munir as field marshal. And the reason was to control the narrative, to tell the people, देखो, General Saab ने कितनी बड़ी फतह हासिल की है. But then look at apart from the political and the army, the differences between the army and the air force. DGISPR came out with a statement about 2 or 3 days ago that there were 8 other places that the Indian Air Force had hit. There were places like Peshawar and some places in Sindh. I forget all the names, but there were 8 other places he mentioned. Now, I think in India, we were looking only at the 11 air bases and the 9 terror training camps. Addition of these 8, people said, hey, the Indian Air Force did much better than what even they claimed that they had done. Or maybe it was mentioned, but it was not noted too significantly. So what the army was trying to do was to pull down the Air Force, Pakistan Air Force, that they think that they have done so well and they have protected us. Actually, they didn't. They were not able to defend. The air defense was so weak that they were not able to defend right from Skardu, Peshawar, right up to Mali. So the entire length and breadth of Pakistan was hit and the Air Force was not able to defend. So just to bring down the Air Force and tell the Air Force that, hey, we are the people who are the masters here and not you. So because this talk had started that, why shouldn't the Air Force chief become a 5-star, become Marshal of the Air Force rather than the Army chief? So there is a difference also between the Army and the Air Force, and as you mentioned, between the Army and the politicians. Though I don't think the politicians can push that opposition too strongly for fear of losing their own position.
Right. So, amidst all of these developments, how does Pakistan's engagement with the United Nations Security Council align with the efforts to project itself as a responsible international actor amid, all of this regional instability?
You see, being a member of the Security Council is a temporary affair. It's a 2-year rotational post. There is a certain block for Asia, and currently it is a member. India was a member some time ago. So I don't think so. It has got much to do with it being a responsible player. Of course, now it has also been appointed to the sanctions committee, Taliban sanctions committee, and also the terrorism committee with vice president or something. But its image as a responsible international player are due to other factors. And those factors are its geographical position and the fact that China and the United States at present finds Pakistan useful for their own particular purposes. Pakistan has always leveraged its geography, right from the time of Ayub Khan when they gave bases to US U-2 planes to spy on the Soviet Union, till one of the planes was shot down by the Soviet Union. Then, when the Soviet Union attacked Afghanistan again, it became a frontline state. And then in the war on terror, it had to play a central role. So, by leveraging its geographical position, so once you are dependent on another country, then it becomes in West's interest to project Pakistan as a responsible player, as Pakistan who's helpful to the West. Everybody knows what Pakistan really is. It is the hub, the centerpiece of terrorism in the world till today. But because of their other interests, they try and project Pakistan being an internationally responsible player. It has got very little to its temporary membership of the UN Security Council.
Okay. And you mentioned about, this Afghanistan and, Pakistan disparity at the moment, considering Taliban. We are also cementing our ties with the Taliban, with the diplomatic conversations happening. How does that, I mean, it's definitely unfavorable for Pakistan. So how weak Pakistan is at this moment, or let me frame it, how can, India and Afghanistan align well to, work towards the stability in the region now?
See, so long as Pakistan continues to foment terrorism, both in Afghanistan and in India, stability in the region is a long dream. It's not going to happen because Pakistan will always seek to do something either in India or in Afghanistan for the sake of its own interests. It thinks it's protecting its interests by using terrorists. So I don't think so we can really achieve stability till then, till Pakistan actually defangs the terrorists which it has created. But yes, India and Afghanistan working together can share information about the terrorist groups in Afghanistan. It can share information about terrorist groups in India, and a lot of information sharing can take place. So that is one thing which is a big worry for Pakistan. They feel that if there is a collaboration or cooperation between India and the Taliban, then its worst nightmare, its biggest fault line, is the Durand Line. And the Taliban have not accepted the Durand Line. In fact, in parts, they've even torn up the Durand Line, saying the line divides brothers. This is an unsettled. In fact, they say there is no boundary. And this is a line consistently held by all Afghan governments since 1949, ever since the Loya Jirga took place. All Afghan governments of different shades, whether royalists, Republicans, Mujahideen, communists, everybody has held that line, and the Taliban, that there is no international border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. This is Pakistan's worst nightmare. And they feel that India coming closer to Taliban, India can egg the Taliban on to challenge the Durand Line far more openly than what they have done. So Pakistan is very uncomfortable. And instead of talking to the two countries in a civilized manner, they think that if they foment terrorism, they will be safer. And they're soon going to find out that this doesn't work because there is a backlash of terrorism from Afghanistan. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is a very strong and potent force in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and spreading out to different parts of Pakistan also. So, and India has responded very strongly to terrorism. They were not expecting. We've talked only about the kinetic measures, but even the non-kinetic measures, are hurting them a lot. So I think it's a very problematic situation for Pakistan, India and the Taliban talking to each other and coming closer to each other.
Right. And coming to the Indus Water Treaty, as tension has escalated and India is preparing to manage the long-term diplomatic and humanitarian fallout of the IWT, how viable are Pakistan's legal avenues through international forums to challenge such a move? And what next? What happens to the IWT now?
There are two issues involved here. One is Pakistan's water adverse water situation today due to India holding the treaty in abeyance, or because of the mismanagement of its water resources for the past several decades? That's a critical question. And second, has India stopped the waters of the Indus Waters Treaty, or holding it only in abeyance? Now, coming to the first one about Pakistan's own water situation, I've studied this in my first book. I have a chapter on water on this, and they have totally mismanaged the resources. In 1951, Pakistan was a water abundant country, but because of the unchecked growth of population and the mismanagement of water resources, today they're a water scarce country with the per capita availability of water falling below 1,000 cubic meters. And a lot of people feel in think tanks in Pakistan and international organizations that they will be an absolute water scarce country by 2035, which means drought-like conditions in parts of the country. Now, India is not responsible for any of this because this is their own mismanagement. By holding the treaty in abeyance means two things. India is not stopping the water because India does not have the infrastructure to store the massive quantities of water in the Indus, the Jhelum, and the Chennai. Unlike the structures we have built on the eastern rivers. We have the Bakra Langar of the Satluj, we have the Pong Dam on the Beas, and you have the Ranjit Sagar on the Ravi. But on the western rivers, we have only run-of-the-river projects, basically to generate electricity, which we are allowed as per the treaty. In fact, we are even allowed to store about 3 million acre feet on the western rivers, which we haven't done. We only store about 4.7 million acre feet. So we are not stopping the water. What we are doing is making it unpredictable. We are not sharing information with Pakistan, hydrological information. So they do not know how much water is going to be released today, how much water will not be released over the next 2 days. So that is creating uncertainty. So the farmers doesn't know how much water will be there in the canal, or will there be water in the canal, especially at this time, which is the Kharif sowing period, the early Kharif sowing period. So that is one, not sharing hydrological data. And the second one is silting. We are able to flush out from our dams silt, which accumulates, and it is easier to do it now than it was earlier because Pakistan will always be raising all kinds of objections. That's all we've done. We are not withholding. So this is a wrong misnomer which Pakistan is saying कि हमारा पानी बंद कर दिया. कोई पानी नहीं बंद हुआ. It is not being regulated. Now, if Pakistan had options legally, India has said since early 24, or even earlier, we've written to them that it's time we reviewed the treaty because of changes in climate change, growth of population, and technological advancements. Once the 60s technology and today's technology of dams is totally different. For example, the spillways at that time had to be on top of the dam because you had no technology to open the spillways at the bottom. Today, you do have that. Pakistan's own new dam, which is called Karot, for example, has got them right at the bottom so that you can use in flushing. But Pakistan doesn't let us do that. So we had said, let's review the treaty. They have stonewalled it. So even when they go for any kind of legal redressal, the first question they'll be asked is, have you had a dialogue? Have you talked to India? And India's proposal is on the table, and Pakistan has been stonewalling. Now they're making these small noises that we are willing to talk, and let's talk now and all that. But the Prime Minister made clear that water and blood cannot flow together. They will have to show credibly that they are announcing terrorism before we can sort of have a conversation. So I think they really missed the bus as far as this is concerned. And now they keep threatening that China, as the upper riparian, can stop your water. China really can't. Whether it's the Brahmaputra or the Satluj, it really can't. But besides, the biggest catchment area, both for Brahmaputra and the Satluj, is within India itself. So, that argument also doesn't flow. Basically, Pakistan has to take a call that is it worth continuing with terrorism or is it worth living as a normal country? If you live as a normal country, then you can, a lot of gates, a lot of doors opens up to you both bilaterally as well as internationally. If you continue to be this terrorist state, those doors are going to be shut and your people ultimately are going to suffer. Because there is no life without water. I mean, everybody knows that. And today, when you see snippets from the Pakistan television which come on Indian television now, you find that people are miserable. You know, the kind of water they've had to drink, this dirty, polluted water. There's no water for breathing. Karachi has a huge problem. As it is, there was a tanker mafia there. But now it's become even worse. That's the kind of call that Pakistan itself will have to make.
Right. So I think it's more to do with the narrative, that has been spread from their side. Yeah. So thank you so much. Like this brings us to the end of our conversation. And I really want to thank you, for really taking us, through Operation Sindoor, how India has really exemplified, its own strategic stances, and at the same time, a very strong security call out, are that what action, we can take in terms of terrorism, which is a long-term threat from our very western neighbor. So thank you so much, Mr. Devashir, for your time and for really taking us through all of these insights.
Thank you very much, Swati. Nice talking to you.
Thank
Wish
you
you all
so
the best.
much. Thank you.